Hello dear viewers. Sparkling Heart. Today's story follows the heartfelt journey of CEO Tung and Ly Tu Anh as they prepare for a new life together on their farm. From walking hand in hand through the market, carefully choosing every small item for their future home, to sharing gentle, loving gestures in the middle of a crowded place, every moment paints a picture of sincere and warm love. It's not just about preparing material things, but about two hearts moving toward the same future, promising to stay together through every challenge and build a peaceful, happy life side by side. If you enjoy emotional, meaningful, and heartwarming love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and share to support us. Herb Sparkles, your support is the motivation for us to keep bringing you more beautiful and touching stories. The morning sun spread a gentle golden glow across the bustling marketplace as CEO Tung held Ly Tu Anh's hand, guiding her through the lively crowd. The air was filled with a blend of familiar scents, fresh vegetables, fragrant herbs, and the faint sweetness of ripe fruits stacked neatly on wooden stalls. Vendors called out warmly, inviting customers to stop and take a look, while the hum of conversations created a comforting rhythm that made the place feel alive. Yet, in the middle of all that movement and noise, Tung and Tu Anh seemed to exist in a quiet world of their own. Tung's grip on her hand was firm but gentle, as if silently promising that he would never let go. From time to time, he glanced at her with a soft smile, his usually sharp and decisive eyes now filled with warmth. He carefully examined each item they needed for their new life at the farm: durable tools for building and repairing, sturdy baskets for harvesting crops, and even simple kitchen supplies that would soon become part of their daily routine. For Tung, every object he chose was more than just a necessity, it was a piece of the future he was building with her. Standing beside him, Tu Anh couldn't help but feel a quiet happiness blooming in her heart. She watched as he discussed prices with the vendors, his tone polite yet confident, and admired how effortlessly he adapted to this simple environment, so different from the corporate world he once dominated. To her, this wasn't just a shopping trip, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where love replaced ambition as the center of their lives. She imagined waking up early together, tending the garden side by side, and sharing meals they had prepared with their own hands. At one point, she gently tugged his sleeve, pointing toward a small stall selling handmade blankets. The soft fabrics, woven with care, reminded her of the warmth she hoped their home would always hold. Tung followed her gaze and nodded, immediately choosing one that he thought would keep her warm during the colder nights at the farm. Without a word, he placed it in their basket, but the meaning behind the gesture spoke volumes. It was his quiet way of saying that her comfort and happiness would always come first. As they continued walking, their shoulders occasionally brushed against each other, sending small sparks of affection through the simplest contact. Tu Anh leaned slightly closer, her eyes shining with excitement and tenderness. In that moment, she realized that happiness didn't come from grand gestures or luxurious things, it came from moments like this, where love was present in every glance, every touch, and every shared decision. Though surrounded by strangers, Tung and Tu Anh felt completely at home. The crowded market faded into the background, leaving only the sound of their laughter and the unspoken understanding between them. Step by step, as they filled their baskets, they were also filling their hearts, with hope, with trust, and with a deep, unwavering love that would soon blossom in the quiet fields of their new farm. They paused at a small stall tucked between rows of colorful produce, where delicate handmade items were displayed with quiet pride. The noise of the market softened around them, as if the world itself had slowed just enough to give their moment space to breathe. Tung turned slightly toward Tu Anh, his expression gentler than ever, and without thinking too much, he reached out to brush a loose strand of hair away from her face. His fingers lingered for a second longer than necessary, a silent confession of how much he treasured her presence. Tu An's cheeks warmed instantly, a soft blush rising as she lowered her gaze, though the smile on her lips betrayed her happiness. "Are you tired?" he asked in a low, caring voice, his tone carrying more affection than concern. She shook her head, her hand tightening around his as if to reassure him. "No. I'm just happy," she replied softly. The simplicity of her words struck something deep inside him. For a man who had spent most of his life chasing success, power, and recognition, hearing that he was the reason behind her happiness felt more valuable than anything he had ever achieved before. Tung let out a quiet breath, then gently guided her closer, his arm instinctively wrapping around her shoulders. The gesture was natural, protective, and full of warmth. "Life at the farm won't be easy," he admitted, his voice steady but sincere. "There will be days when we're exhausted, when things don't go as planned. But no matter what happens, I'll always be here, with you." His words weren't dramatic or overly poetic, but their honesty made them powerful. They carried the weight of a promise he fully intended to keep. Tu An leaned her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes for a brief moment as she let his words settle into her heart. Surrounded by strangers and the constant movement of the marketplace, she somehow felt as if she had found the quietest, safest place in the world. "I don't need a perfect life," she whispered. "As long as I have you, I can face anything." Her voice was soft, yet unwavering, filled with a quiet strength that mirrored his own. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, sharing a silence that felt deeper than any conversation. Around them, people continued to bargain, laugh, and move about, unaware of the small but meaningful world that had formed between the two of them. Tung gently rested his chin against the top of her head, closing his eyes briefly as if to hold on to the feeling. When they finally stepped apart, it wasn't because the moment had ended, but because it had already become a part of them. Tung reached for her hand again, intertwining his fingers with hers, this time with even more certainty. They continued browsing the stall, exchanging soft smiles and quiet laughter, but something had changed. Their love, once expressed through glances and gestures, had now taken shape in words, simple promises that would guide them through whatever lay ahead. As they moved on through the market, their steps felt lighter, yet more grounded than ever before. Every shared look, every small touch carried a deeper meaning. It wasn't just affection anymore, it was commitment, trust, and the beginning of a lifelong journey they had both chosen with open hearts. When they finally left the marketplace, the sun had begun its slow descent, casting a warm amber glow over the narrow road leading back to their future home. Tung carried several bags in one hand while keeping his other hand firmly intertwined with Tu An's, as if he feared even a moment of separation. The weight of the supplies was nothing compared to the sense of purpose growing within him. Each item they had chosen together was more than just a necessity, it was a small piece of the life they were about to build side by side. Tu An walked close to him, her shoulder brushing lightly against his arm with every step. She glanced at the bags he was carrying and smiled, knowing he would never let her carry anything too heavy. "You don't have to do everything on your own," she said gently, her voice filled with concern and affection. Tung looked at her, his eyes softening as he slowed his pace just a little. "I know," he replied, "but taking care of you, it makes me happy." His answer was simple, but it carried a sincerity that made her heart ache in the most beautiful way. The road ahead stretched quietly, lined with trees swaying softly in the late afternoon breeze. The distant sounds of the market faded behind them, replaced by the peaceful rhythm of nature. For the first time, the idea of moving to the farm felt completely real. It wasn't just a plan anymore, it was a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Tu Anh could already imagine the small house they would share, the mornings filled with sunlight, and the evenings where they would sit together, talking about everything and nothing at all. As they reached a small open field along the way, Tung suddenly stopped walking. Tu Anh turned to him, slightly surprised, but before she could ask anything, he gently set the bags down and took both of her hands in his. His expression was calm, yet deeply serious, as if he was about to say something that had been resting in his heart for a long time. The golden light of the setting sun framed his face, making the moment feel almost timeless. "I may not be able to promise you a life without hardships," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I can promise you this, I will stay by your side, no matter what comes our way. I will choose you, again and again, every single day." His words were not grand or overly elaborate, but they were real, and that made them more powerful than any perfect speech. Tu Anh felt her chest tighten, her eyes glistening as she listened. Without hesitation, she squeezed his hands gently and nodded. "And I'll stay with you," she replied, her voice trembling slightly but filled with certainty. "No matter how difficult things get, I won't let go." In that quiet field, with only the fading light as their witness, they made a vow that didn't need ceremony or applause, just two hearts willing to walk the same path together. Tung pulled her into a warm embrace, holding her close as if trying to capture the moment forever. She wrapped her arms around him, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It felt like home. The world around them seemed to pause, as if honoring the depth of their promise. When they finally continued their journey, the sky had turned into shades of orange and soft purple, guiding them forward. Hand in hand, they walked toward the life they had chosen, a life built not on perfection, but on love, trust, and the quiet strength of two people who believed in forever.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Ly Tu Anh Review. Vậy là câu chuyện của chúng ta ngày hôm nay đã kết thúc tại đây. Nội dung câu chuyện hôm nay của chúng ta thì đã kể về việc đó chính là CEO Tùng và cùng Ly Tu Anh đã cùng nhau đi ra chợ để sắm đồ dùng. Điều đặc biệt là đồ dùng này đã được sắm sửa cho căn nhà mới tại lông trại mới của Ly Tu Anh và CEO Tùng. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn về câu chuyện Ly Tu Anh và CEO Tùng sẽ còn được kể ở các video tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy đón xem nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Bye bye.